In the spring of the year 2000, theatergoers in New York had the chance to see what John Lahr of the New Yorker magazine called one of the signal theatrical experiences of the last 10 years. It took place in a decrepit former men's club in the financial district. There were 30 seats in the audience. In other words, a lot of people who wanted to see this play couldn't. I'm Dean Olsher, and I'm here to fix that. Today, The Next Big Thing and WNYC bring you a special presentation of The Designated Mourner by Wallace Shawn, uncut and uncensored. The Designated Mourner is a play about things that don't often make it into popular entertainment. It's about how people behave in politically troubled times. It's about the tension between high and low culture, about power and poverty, and almost murderous envy. All recurring themes in the plays of Wallace Shawn. As John Lahr sees it,
he's the most brazen, almost arrogant renegade that we have as a playwright. I mean, he's actually trying to look at people and say, you are corrupt.
I was actually shocked by it. I hadn't seen anything like that done before.
Writer Stanley Crouch was so taken with the film version of the London production, which starred Mike Nichols and Miranda Richardson, that he saw it at least 5 times, as well as the New York production with Wallace Shawn in the title role.
I mean, he seems to me to be thinking about things like bringing together a poetic command of the language along with ideas about social conflict, about class, about loyalty, about betrayal.
The Designated Mourner is a challenging piece of work, in more ways than one. John Lahr, in his review of the New York production, wrote, "You have to work to understand this play. In fact, you have to work just to get to the play."
You had to go down to Wall Street. You had to find the place. It was an old men's club. You had to walk up 3 flights of stairs, and as you walked up, this wonderful music designed by Bruce Odland started to seep in. And when you got up to the top, you found this derelict room.
It was abandoned. It was spooky. Many people said it reminded them of The Shining.
This is Andre Gregory, who directed the New York production and this version for radio.
It was a frightening place to be in.
Typical Wally and Andre, they're not just chairs there. I mean, see, they're like leather chairs and armchairs, and they've gone out and bought blankets so we can, if it gets cold, we can have blankets, you know. And instead of having, their idea of a bar at intermission was that they bought a whole lot of apples and fruit juice, and at the interval, you go up and just have it, take it, you know, drink it.
Wally and I were sort of like 2 friendly undertakers at Frank E. Campbell's welcoming the audience. We were charming and slightly sinister and ghost-like.
In this rundown men's club, the setting helped tell the story. But there are ways in which the Designated Mourner doesn't even need a setting. For one thing, the characters only occasionally interact with each other. Instead, the drama unfolds in the stories that they tell, through monologues, which they deliver directly to the audience. Andre Gregory, who spent years rehearsing the same actors who you'll be hearing today, he said that the disembodied voices on the radio are perfect for the Designated Mourner. It was conceived as the most intimate kind of theater, much like My Dinner with Andre. And if you ever saw that film, you know that it consisted of just Andre Gregory and Wallace Shawn sitting at a table in a restaurant, talking. In other words, nothing happens. At least it seems that way on the surface.
Well, there's a trick to it. My Dinner with Andre was really written as a radio play because Wally and I grew up not watching television. We listened to the radio. I loved radio dramas, The Shadows, Stella Dallas, Backstage Wife, all of that. So the trick is that these stories activate the imagination of every single member of the audience in a completely different way. In other words, like great storytelling, we describe something and you see it in your head.
Now, the thing about radio drama is that it's usually dressed up with sound effects. Instead of sets and costumes, the sound helps to tell the story, along with the words. This production is marked by a sonic nakedness, particularly in the last act. And it's something you just don't often hear on the radio. But, as with the production in the men's club with the peeling paint, that starkness helps to tell the story. For one thing, it makes you pay attention to the musicality that's inherent in the script. And not just on the surface, of how it sounds. Stanley Crouch argues that there is a deeper kind of musicality to this play, like an opera by Wagner.
Wagner will do something like he'll go, boo, 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 boo. Then he'll say, boo, 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 boo. Then he'll say, boo, 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 boo. Then he'll go, boo, 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 boo. Boo, 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 doo, dee. You know, that's his thing. Now, Wallace Shawn does that over and over in this, too, in his way, from a literary standpoint. So I think that the person who listens closely will begin to see these things appear and reappear.
So, in The Designated Mourner, be on the lookout for these motifs, among others: cats, mice, rats, the ocean, fire, tea.
There's nothing in this play, there's not one word in the play that's thrown in there arbitrarily. Everything has a functional reason. That's why it has this billowing symphonic effect emotionally.
And as for musicality, it does exist at the level of the performance, too. Wallace Shawn's in particular.
His music, his special music in the play, is hemming and hawing, laughing at himself, making mistakes, putting himself down, stammering, the uncertainty, not unlike Woody Allen, make you go out to the character, make you like him. And he lures you, because you, the audience, want to like somebody, into a kind of narrative trap.
It's a trap because, well, you'll find this out eventually, but as Andre Gregory says, the listener is really at the mercy of the narrator and his version of history.
On one level, Wally's dealing with the nature of time and memory. It's a memory play. So memory is a very peculiar thing, you know. And I think he really does get at the nature of what memory is like. And also, there's a haunting in the play. So it's a little bit like being in a haunted house of the past.
There are a couple of other things you should know. For one, this play makes no concession to the television age attention span. It takes place over a few hours. Stanley Crouch suggests that maybe you should imagine you're living in a more leisurely time, that the year is 1860, say.
And Lincoln and Douglas are debating things of such extraordinary seriousness that you've taken the family to the debates and you've prepared food the night before. And you're going to sit there on the lawn and listen to these two great orators speak at length about these issues because you really want to know what they mean. So you're not interested in a synopsis. You're not interested in a sound bite, as they perfectly call it today. You really want to know how these things resonate and what the nuanced meanings are.
Our play takes place in an imaginary country in which a ruling group of wealthy people ruthlessly oppresses the poor. We hear about this imaginary country from the three characters in the play: Jack, the narrator, his wife Judy, and Judy's father, Howard. Howard, played by Larry Pine, comes from a privileged background. He's an intellectual, a writer, a dissident at odds with the regime in power. But he's also intimately familiar with that regime. His father was a close colleague of the president, who's been president for many decades. In his early 20s, Howard had an experience that would change his life and his politics. He wrote an essay called The Enemy, which was sympathetic to an underground rebel group, and that essay would later get him into trouble. Howard's daughter, Judy, played by Deborah Eisenberg, shares her father's politics. She's sophisticated, intellectual, and she reveres Howard and his achievements. Judy's husband, Jack, is consumed with envy for Howard's cultural refinement, but hates what he sees as his air of superiority.